Welcome to everyone to the September 14th, 2020 meeting of the Rotary Club of Raleigh. I hope everyone enjoyed their Labor Day holiday last week, and I hope everyone's getting settled in for the fall. We did try a little something new today. I know I enjoyed my roast beef sandwich, and I'm still a little slow, but I hope you all that did pick up a meal enjoyed your lunch and your cupcake. And I, for one, was happy about the fact that it gave me an opportunity to go downstairs and see some folks in person for a change, instead of just seeing your little faces on the Zoom call. It's great to see Charlie and David Forrest and Corey and quite a few others that came downtown to pick up their lunches. And I'm sure Linda had the same pleasure up at the site in North Raleigh. That's just one example of how during this, strange and challenging time that we're going through, we're still trying to find creative ways to safely bring as much of our normal weekly Rotary experience to you as we can until such time as we can actually safely meet in person again without being afraid that we're going to get each other sick. Please send your comments and thoughts about what we did there, and let us know if this is something you'd like us to keep doing, we will take notes and act accordingly. And so for now, let me turn the program over to give us the invocation and introduce our guests.
Thank you very, very much, Eric. I have to admit, these are certainly strange and unprecedented times to be charged with delivering invocations on a weekly basis. I must not let the opportunity to escape to remind each and every one of you on the call today that on Monday, today, we are witnessing the destruction of millions of acres on the West Coast due to the wildfires that are currently raging on. There are millions of Americans who are unemployed, and there are now 194,000 Americans who have lost their lives. And despite this, there still is hope. I must be hopeful because I am still alive, and I am still employed, and I still have a home. We all must be hopeful. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. That was Emily Dickinson. Now, if you all would please join me for the national anthem, not the national anthem, excuse me, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Thank you very much. I wanted to provide you with a brief update, if I can locate my notes at this moment. I was asked about 2 weeks ago to provide you with a brief update on the vaccine development, and I had the extreme luxury and pleasure to speak with the scientist, the lead scientist in charge of the development of the vaccines for the United States of America. In fact, she's responsible for 3 out of the 4 major vaccine trials, and it is a great chance that when you do take a vaccine, it will be her design. Her name is Dr. Meeker Corbett, and she received her PhD with me at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Right now, there are roughly 4 vaccines that are in phase 3 clinical trials. The big ones are Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and AstraZeneca. The 3, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and Moderna, are the ones that Dr. Corbett's vaccine designs are responsible for. And I want to remind you all that phase 3 clinical trials means that the vaccines are capable and effective of eliciting a productive immune response against COVID-19. And phase 3 simply means that they are now testing it and using trials for safety purposes. So we have a vaccine that works against COVID-19, and now we are making sure that it is safe for the public. So in regards to scientists and the vaccine development, that is going faster than ever before. This is a historic pace, and we actually should have a vaccine hopefully soon. But I just want to repeat, we have vaccines in phase 3 clinical trials, which means that the vaccines work. We are just testing it for safety. I just wanted to provide that update. And if anybody has any questions, you can email me. I don't know if we have enough time. We'll have Ralph Barrick presenting in a few weeks. So if you have any questions, you can email me. I just want to, at the time, recognize any guests that we may have.
Yes, I have one guest who's going to speak shortly, Stacy Carless. If you want to say hi to everyone, she's with the Census Bureau.
Hi, good afternoon. Stacy Carless, and I'm with NC Counts Coalition for 2020 Census.
Great, thank you. And then I know Mary Moss has a guest she would like to introduce.
I do. Thank you so much. Bob Bilbrough is my guest today, and I have worked really under his guidance. He has been an amazing force, along with his wife Carol, at our campaign for Healing Transitions. And Healing Transitions is a recovery program, peer-to-peer recovery program. If you haven't heard about it, we would love to introduce you to it. But Bob and Carol are co-chairing the campaign. And when I heard David Meeker was going to be the speaker today, David, welcome. I couldn't help but extend the invitation broadly. And so I'm delighted that Bob can join us today. Bob and Carol have been a force for good in the community for decades, both in their philanthropy and with his visionary medicine that he has practiced for so many years in Wake County. So welcome, Bob, and thanks, David. One quick thing. I want to say a big shout out to Dean Ogan, for the owner of Rocky Top, because they have done some amazing philanthropy throughout this pandemic. And so I know everyone has talked about Rocky Top and the lunches today, but I have been so impressed with what they've done, and they've also done that at Healing Transitions. Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary and Richard, thanks again for your thoughtful invocation. You always do such a great job of facing up to where we are, but still bringing the hope and the thoughtfulness. And Evelyn, thank you for your beautiful singing for us today. And again, we are just so glad to have everybody with us today. Please remember to either send a chat or an email to Linda if you want to make a donation to the cart bucket. Again, we can't put them in the, on the table since we're not in person, but the need continues. We do have some happy dollars today, and I would like to recognize Racine for her happy dollars. Racine, are you there? I think you may be muted.
Racine?
I'm okay. I'm here.
Gotcha.
Okay.
On Labor Day weekend, under beautiful skies in Wilmington, our daughter Allegra Sinclair married Joseph McGee. It was a small ceremony in person. There were only immediate family at the venue along with some local friends, but we successfully streamed it to 118 unique devices. And we're told that people felt like they saw the wedding so up close and were so able to hear and see the bride and groom that they thought it was better than even being there in person. And thanks to our governor, we went to 2.5 on Friday before the wedding. So we were able to legally take all the people who attended down to our beach house, which we've had for 20 years at Curry Beach, in a little bus, properly masked, semi-socially distanced once we got to the beach. And by that time of the day, everybody had left, and we were able to have a great beach party like you would see in a movie for them. And all of our neighbors that we've known for so many years came out and sort of said hello and congratulations. And so from my perspective, it was a perfect day. We also broke the curse of hurricanes for the last 3 years on Labor Day weekend. So I think that everyone should be glad of that. We did contribute broadly to the betterment of North Carolina. And I'm just so happy for them, and I know they're going to be very happy. Thank you.
All right, Racine, congratulations. That sounds like it was just a magical time, and we're so happy for you and your family. All right, let me just go ahead and give you a quick preview of things to come. Next week, we're going to have, this week, we're going to hear all about dealing with the pandemic from somebody that's talking from the perspective of someone in the real estate development business and the restaurant business, which are, two of the areas that are highly affected. Next week, we're going to have Michael Landguth, the president of the RDU Airport Authority. So hear about dealings with the pandemic from that perspective. And then the following week, Mayor Mary Ann Baldwin will be our speaker. So we have, and then Dr. Barrick will be filling us in on the latest with how we're trying to fight off this pandemic on October the 5th. So we have a lot of good things coming up. Please keep joining us. And we are so happy that everyone is here today. Let me now turn the program over very briefly to Charles Edwards to give us sort of a final report on our mask sales initiative.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. Just for those that may have missed it, Eric and I were able, I guess now about 2 weeks ago, to take a check actually over to Rocky Top and present it to Chandler Ellis and the team actually from Overflowing Hands. So we were able to see what happens on the ground as they were loading up the trucks to send out food. They were describing what happens on their daily routes. They had gone from 5 days a week now to 6 days a week. They received, as part of, I believe the president signed an additional order to provide additional funds from the Department of agriculture, but they're going to expand the service and also be able to continue it, which is very important. But these people of all walks of life, scattered throughout Wake County, are totally dependent on this meal service, since there is very few and far between alternatives. So great job to my fellow Rotarians for donating money through the sale of the mass so that we could support this very worthy effort. That's it.
Thanks, Charles. And just in case anyone hasn't quite made the connection yet, so it's Rocky Top Catering who's working with Overflowing Hands to provide all these meals, like 3,000, at least twice a week, I believe is the way it works. And so it's the Rocky Top Catering that we are also contracting with to provide the meals that many of us have enjoyed today. And so that's another way that we can kind of help support them in this whole effort. Not only helps support people, families who are in need of food, but a local business that is finding a new and different way to keep its doors open during this time. So we think that's a win-win proposition all along. All right, at this point, I want to recognize our guest, Stacy Carless, who has an important announcement for us regarding the 2020 census. Stacy, thank you so much for joining us to share this important information today.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. As mentioned, I'm Stacy Carless, and I am Executive Director of NC Counts Coalition, and we are a nonprofit 501c3 organization established in 2017 by a group of philanthropists, specifically for the mission of obtaining a complete and accurate 2020 census for North Carolina. So there's a lot going on with the census, if you've heard about it in the news, which hopefully you have by now. But some not so great news, but better news for me today is North Carolina is doing a little bit better than we have been. But just to give you a little bit of background, just a reminder as to why this is important, it's all about money and power. So in 2017, North Carolina did receive $44 billion in census-guided funding, and these are for programs such as SNAP, WIC, the Children's Health Insurance, Medicaid, Medicare, school breakfast, school lunch, transportation, infrastructure, pretty much any federal program that you could think about is touched by census-guided funding. And that works out to be about $1,800 per person. And then you take that $1,800 per person and you multiply that by 10 years, that's $18,000 per person, that when an individual is counted, they bring that funding back to our community. So when we're talking about the dollars and cents, it's extremely important for North Carolina, especially with the pandemic. When we're talking about recovering, and we see unemployment at an all-time high, we see 15% increase in individuals asking for food assistance programs. We see folks at risk of being evicted. In the coming years, we're probably going to have folks who may not have relied on some government programs before, such as affordable housing and SNAP and WIC. They might need it. And we have to make sure that we have access to the funds to actually provide that for them. So it's extremely important that we get counted. Next is our political representation. So of course, North Carolina is slated to pick up a congressional seat because we are one of the largest states in the country. Right now that is at risk because North Carolina is not performing well in the census, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But before I do that, the third reason that it's important is for planning. I heard you all talking about vaccines and the pandemic. So even something as simple, or not as simple, but as complicated as determining where vaccines need to be, how many individuals are within a community, how many vaccines do we need to prepare for, how do we actually, and not just with the pandemic, with natural disasters as well, when there's hurricane relief, tornado relief, first responders need to know where people are, how many people there are there, so that they can determine the amount of federal funding that goes into those areas, as well as to provide resources for folks who are impacted. So it's extremely important for our community. Currently, and I'll kind of give you like a little breakdown as to where we are. When I checked it this morning, North Carolina is at 61.7 for self-response. Our 2010 self-response was 64.8. And just a little bit of background, we have been trending low compared to the rest of the country since the beginning of this operation. So last week we were ranked number 39. I'm not sure where we're ranked at right now, but I'm sure it's probably still in the bottom half of the country for actual participation, which is extremely concerning and alarming one, because North Carolina typically does well in a census operation, but two, because we are one of the fastest growing states in the country. And so we are going to be leaving a lot on the table if we don't pick up the slack in the next couple of weeks. If you hear the response rate, so our total response rate is 84.8%, which is self-response and non-response follow-up. Self-response is when you do it on your own. You could do it online. You could look in your mailbox for the form that they mailed out. You could call in. Self-response is when you tell the government who you are, where you're located, and you count yourself. Non-response follow-up is when they come by and they knock on doors to figure out where people are. Between self-response and non-response, we're at 84.8%, which sounds really good. However, the concern is because of a lot of red flags that have been happening in the operation in North Carolina since the census began, especially with the pivot and outreach due to COVID-19, as well as vacant households with natural disasters and college students. We have a lot of challenges in our state. The question is who is being counted and how are they being counted? Because just because it says 84.8%, that doesn't actually tell us like who the individual is. So for example, there's an apartment community here in Raleigh. The enumerator went out twice. They didn't get the response that they needed. So now they're calling the manager of the apartment community for him to tell them who was in those households and what their racial demographics are and how many people are there. So not only would that probably be considered a little intrusive, is it allowed? Yes, but it's a little intrusive, but also it may not be as accurate. How I identify is not how the apartment manager might see me, right? So, and this is important. And the reason that it's important, not only for our representation and our dollars, but also for enforcement and civil rights laws. So when we're talking about voting and all these other issues, this is the data that they go back and they refer to actually enforce civil rights law. So race and ethnicity is actually pretty important to get it right in these matters. So those are some of the challenges. That's where we're at currently. Originally with the pandemic, the administration had asked for a deadline of October 31st. However, for really no reason, they changed their mind, pushed it up to September 30th. So we lost a month during the pandemic. So the amount of days that census workers have actually been out on the field to enumerate has been cut versus like if there was no pandemic by at least 30 days. So we have a lot working against us outside of the pandemic, outside of natural disasters, outside of just the census being complicated as it is. We have a shorter amount of time. They haven't hired enough people. They've had a lot of people quit. And really we're concerned that this information is not going to be accurate. It's not going to be reliable. And North Carolina is literally on the verge of a failed census. So with that, in these final 2 weeks, we are asking that whatever your network is, that you reach out to it, whether that be an email to everyone in your listserv, whether it be to text everyone in your cell phone, or if you have Facebook, to post a simple message and say, have you been counted? And encourage people to self-respond to the census as soon as possible within the next 2 weeks. There is a pending lawsuit and it is supposed to be heard on the 17th. So there is a chance that a federal court might extend the deadline, but we really cannot rely on that. As of right now, we have a little less than 2 weeks to get the rest of our state counted. We're missing about 3.8 million individuals. Most of them are Black, brown, rural, and poor. And we can't afford it. So that is my update.
Stacy, thank you so much for sharing this important message, and let me second your request to everyone to reach out and make sure that we ensure that North Carolinians all get counted for the census. Thank you so much. And now I'm going to move on to a quick financial report from Tom Packer and Charles Edwards.
Thank you, President Eric, and good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to give, as treasurer, just a brief financial report. I know some members have been asking how we're doing, where we're going, et cetera. Depending on how articulate I am, Charles Edwards may have a couple of words to add as well. Briefly, though, As you know, we lowered dues to $180 a quarter starting July 1st, which is the start of our fiscal year. The background to that was that we were very proud of ourselves, if you will, that we had come up with a new budget last February in advance of July 1st, which after several years of not having changed the dues, did have a dues increase to $230 a quarter. So I just wanted to, I guess, emphasize that since COVID hit the fan in March, that the club decided to come up with a new budget. We needed to, and came up with a $50 a quarter reduction in dues, which comes from the $230 that was going to be put into place to the $180 a quarter. We have a board meeting tonight, and I anticipate that we're going to keep the $180 reduced dues in place for this quarter. We're going to be going quarter to quarter. We started this year with just about $3,000 in the bank. So we essentially sort of started from scratch on July 1st. And the challenges that we have are knowing that we are saving money because we're not paying the city club, but we have other expenses that keep on going, such as Rotary International dues, district dues, staff compensation, et cetera. And we also had to anticipate how the membership would react to the whole pandemic situation and us having Zoom meetings. So, for example, we had at the end of this last month, about 18% of members have not paid their dues at all this quarter, and that's more than double. It's almost 3 times the usual amount. And maybe even more significantly, we have about 15% of the members who have not paid dues now for 2 quarters, which is about double the usual amount. So our goal is to keep reducing dues as long as we're saving money. We want to end up the year, as opposed to some past years, we feel it's prudent to end the year with some money in the bank for the club, just to have an operating reserve of up to $10,000 a year. But our intent is, if we see as the year goes on, depending on if we go back to the city club and when we do, if we're going to have excess money, our goal is to return that to the members, because we're not trying to obviously make money from the situation, but we're trying to balance the non-payments and reducing dues and keeping up with the expenses we do have. So all in all, the club we have money in the bank now, and our next big expense period will be at the start of the year when we have all the dues to Rotary International and the district. But as I mentioned, I anticipate we'll keep on with our reduced dues this quarter, and then we'll reevaluate at the end of the year, which is the end of our second quarter, with the goal of ending the year with some money in our pocket, and if there's any excess operating funds, to keep reducing dues so that the members get the benefit of that. So Eric, that's my report. I don't know if Charles has anything to add to that.
No, I'm good. Thanks, Tom.
All right. Thank you for sharing, Tom. Trying to lead in lots of different ways during the course of this pandemic has been a bit of a trial and error process. We are working through this as well as we can in lots of different ways. And so we keep trying different things in terms of how we do our meetings, in terms of how we try to be sensitive to the fact that this pandemic is affecting people's pocketbooks as well as it's affecting ours. And our goal is to operate as efficiently as possible and still, keep our balance in the black. So thank you, Tom, for all your hard work in doing that. All right, just a couple more announcements, and then we will get to our speaker. First, for those of you who didn't pop into the meeting right at the beginning, this is a bittersweet meeting. The sweetness is the fact that we have, participating in our Zoom meeting today, Chuck Caldwell. The bitter is that this is sort of his farewell meeting. Chuck is retired, and he's moving down to Little Washington, and he's going to join a very, very lucky Rotary Club there. So just want to say thank you, Chuck, for all your many years of service, for being just a wonderful gentleman, such a wonderful presence in our meetings. And it's been a pleasure having you, and we hope you will come back and visit us often in the future. So everybody just give a quick hand and say thank you to Chuck. And now I want to wish a happy birthday to Tom Packer, September 18. Happy anniversaries to Bill and Vicki Rohr, that's also September 18. And to Tom and Jill Holder, September 18th as well. And now,
Eric, if I could interrupt real quick, I just want to say thank you very much for those kind words. And I realized looking at all these photographs and live people here, how warming it is and how comforting all those meetings really are, to see those familiar, wonderful faces and wonderful people every week in Raleigh. And thank you all very much. And thank the Rotary Club of Raleigh.
Thank you, Chuck. I tell you, it's going to be, I'm so looking forward to being back in the City Club and having some in-person meetings, but it will be a little bit different without you sitting there. So please come and join us at some point.
Thank you, will do.
All right, now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, David Meeker. David is Raleigh born and raised. You may have heard of his dad, Charles. And I have just noticed, looking at the list of participants, that his sister Emily has joined us. And so welcome to my law partner, Emily Meeker, who is joining in the meeting today. David lives downtown with his wife and 2 young boys, and he is a real estate developer and manager and co-founder of 2 interrelated local businesses, Trophy Brewing and Carpenter Development. So I know I'm doing my best to try to support Trophy Brewing by ordering their delicious pizzas every now and again and drinking Cloud Surfer. And I'm sure some of you all do the same. With Carpenter Development, David sort of develops the real estate where the Trophy Brewing locations operate, and he sort of, as I understand it, kind of operates and runs some of the business side of Trophy Brewing, and then frees the chefs and brewmaster to concentrate on what they do. David is very active in his community. He serves on the boards of Common Cause, North Carolinians for Redistricting Reform, the Chamber, the Downtown Raleigh Alliance, Dix Park Conservancy, and Art Space. And he's actively involved with fundraising for Healing Transitions, a detox and recovery center at Dix Park. Mary was mentioning that earlier, I believe. David tells us that Trophy Brewing was looking forward to a great 2020. They had just finished their State of Beer expansion, and they were weeks away from opening the Trophy Brewing on Morgan Street expansion when COVID-19 hit. So now we're going to get to hear from him how he's dealing with all of that and his plan to come back from it. So David, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks. I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks to the Rotary Club of Raleigh for having me, and Eric Stevens for inviting me from Pointer Sproul Law Firm. As Eric mentioned, I'm involved with Trophy Brewing and Carpenter Development, all very focused in downtown Raleigh, and have been hit hard by the pandemic, and also the protests and riots that happened in late May and early June. And I'm mainly talking today on how we're dealing with all the adversity. I first wanted to start with a story about the protests and riots in late May and June, and give you guys sort of an upfront view of what was happening downtown then. So we'll go back to Memorial Day. George Floyd was killed there were protests and riots around the country. And then that Friday, we got word in downtown Raleigh that there was going to be a peaceful protest on Fayetteville Street Saturday afternoon at 5 p.m. So that Saturday morning, I was scheduled to go down with my wife and our two boys to the beach for my wife's family's beach week. You know, we've been looking forward to it for a while, and it was going to be nice to get out of town during the pandemic. So I go for a run, wake up Saturday morning, go for a run. And on the run, I'm sort of thinking, you know, this feels like a moment for our country, a moment for our city. You know, I'm very supportive of the Black Lives Matter movement. You know, I need to be at this peaceful protest and you know, and be there in support. And so I get back from the run, ask my wife, hey, is it okay if I come down to your family's beach week a day late? And my wife's very understanding and sort of says, sure, you know, come down tomorrow. We'll head down today and we'll just see you early in the morning. So a work colleague and I go to the peaceful protest at 5, listen to some great speeches from 5 to 6, march around downtown from 6 to 7. And at 7 p.m. Saturday night, the protest is sort of walking by the jail, and there's an altercation between some of the protesters and some of the folks at the jail, and some tear gas is sprayed, and you guys know where the night went. Well, my friend and I sort of say, hey, it's time for us to get out of here. This is getting to be a dicey situation. So we head home. He went to his condo at the PNC building, and I go to my home sort of between Oakwood and Mordecai. Well, so I'm at home watching everything on WRAL. You're seeing the same thing a lot of y'all saw, you know, glass being broken, buildings being looted, including a couple of our buildings, one of which some of y'all might recognize, which is Beasley's Chicken and Honey. And so at 1:30, I get a call from my friend in the PNC building. He says, hey, David, Beasley's is on fire. So of course I'm thinking, oh, this is terrible. You know, we have a sprinkler system in the building, so it won't burn down. But, you know, if the sprinkler system has gone off, there's going to be a lot of damage. You know, I got to go downtown and deal with it. So this is 1:30, sort of drive downtown, get within 3 or 4 blocks where people are starting to be, park my car, jog in, sort of in the middle of the street. And luckily the fire has gone out. It was just some paper in the storefront, and there hadn't been much damage, and the sprinkler system hadn't gone off. But the glass was broken and people were still going in and out, sort of taking things from the restaurant. So my friend and I said, you know, we knew there was sheetrock inside from some construction we're doing. So we said, let's go in and bring the sheetrock boards to the storefront, and that'll stop people from going in and out. Well, we're inside Beasley's, we're grabbing a piece of sheetrock, and somebody throws a brick at a piece of glass that hadn't been broken yet. And so it sort of scares us, and we're startled, we sort of crouch down, and then somebody driving by shoots a gun in the air. You know, there were some guns in cars. Of course, we're in the side of Beasley, so we don't know that they were shooting in the air. We're thinking they're shooting into Beasley's. And so then we're flat on the floor, scared to death, not sure what to do. Do we go down to the cocktail bar below us and hide in the corner, or what? Well, we stay there for a couple minutes, and then we creep out the broken glass storefront. A couple groups, you know, out front are fighting each other. Everyone had gotten into the restaurant's alcohol by that point, so everybody was drunk. A couple groups were fighting. We get through that, safely make it back to my car, make it home, and just watch the rest on WRAL. End up going to bed at, you know, 5 a.m. just because, you know, watching the news and you know, being shaken by it all. Well, my wife calls me from the beach at 7 a.m. She's been up since 6 or 6:30 because the boys are up. And she, you know, smartly has her phone off, is not paying attention to the news, as you should on a beach week. And she's sort of like, when you coming down? And I'm like, you know, things have gotten off track here in Raleigh. You know, I'm not going to make it. And I'm not going to make it today. I'll try and come down. Needless to say, you know, more riots Sunday night. You know, we were worried about it all week. I never made it to our families, or to her family's beach week. And actually, she ended up coming back up to Raleigh midweek to take care of me for a few hours to make sure I got a good night's sleep, and I was okay. And my wife is very forgiving, but I'm not sure if my in-laws will will forgive me for missing that family beach week. But it was a wild situation, something we'd never seen here in downtown Raleigh, and hopefully one that won't happen again. So I want to tell you guys, lay the groundwork for y'all where we were pre-pandemic, and then tell you about some of the solutions that we're working through to get through this. So as Eric mentioned, going into 2020, we were thinking this was going to be our year. We just done 2 major expansions. We had better financing, better interest rate on our financing than we'd ever had. We were sort of set to make some money and be in a good place. Well, mid-March, pandemic hits. We shut down a little earlier than Governor Cooper's order because we were nervous about things. And of our 125 employees at Trophy Brewing, we had to furlough 75, 60%. So pretty devastating moment as a business owner. The unemployment insurance really did help. Folks were able to get, as much as they were making with us, sometimes a little more on unemployment, and that made that conversation a little easier, but still not an easy one. And then April and May sales were pretty bad. June was absolutely terrible for us. June was terrible because other restaurants had started to open. We decided not to. So we were doing less in takeout than we were before. And really June's losses were unsustainable. If we did that for 2 or 3 months, we just drain our reserves and not be in business anymore. Well, July 1, we start to open our patios and, do a little more business. In July and August, we've gotten to a point where we're doing 50% of our previous sales. 50% is not ideal, but, in a pandemic, I think we can feel good about that. And we've gotten our losses down to a point where we can really weather this for a while. If it goes into March or April, we'll be able to handle it. So we feel good about that. On the real estate side, very similar story. We own the Beasley's Chicken and Honey building. They're in the heart of downtown. They've been impacted by the pandemic and the riots. They're not able to do any business and they're not able to pay rent. We also own the Irregardless building over in the Morgan Street area. Their clientele was an older crowd, and they're going to be much more cautious in terms of coming out from the pandemic to go to eat. So they're not doing a lot of business, not able to pay rent. And another example, we have a warehouse. The tenant there was a compost company focused on universities. They're clearly not doing well, not able to pay rent. And then we had a new development we were starting that's very near John Kane's downtown South project called SoHi that, we've stalled now. You just don't want to be finishing a development, in a pandemic when you're unsure if you're going to be able to lease things. So, big picture, I'd say that, things are looking pretty bad for us, maybe 80% negative, but we're really getting focused on the 20% positive and trying to find some silver linings. And we've done that. And a few examples of that. At Trophy Brewing, we never really focused on to-go food before. We made all our money on Eric coming and drinking beer and eating pizza on site. Well, now we figured out to-go food, and we're doing it at a volume we never would have dreamed of before. And hopefully those sales will last long past the end of the pandemic. We are expanding our beer into new grocery stores. I'll be honest, we were a little snobby about some grocery stores before this. If you weren't a craft beer grocery store, we didn't really want to be there. Well, now it's survival. We'll be in any grocery store that'll have us. And, and we're doing that, and we've had a lot of success. Our downtown location has shut down, and we're renovating and shifting the concept a little. I think that's going to be the biggest silver lining for us of all. When this ends and we open back up in the spring or summer, that location will be better than ever and have a new exciting concept that I'm not even allowed to talk about yet, but it's great. And so we're really trying to take advantage of these bad times to make changes and turn them into something good. Bad times aren't all bad. In our real estate business, it's similar. Where Irregardless is doing a facelift. Next time you go to Irregardless, you'll notice the outside you know, looks good and the inside's been painted and, you know, the floors have been redone, and it'll really be a better experience than you had before. Beasley's is expanding into the old Chuck space. Some of you who know downtown Raleigh well would know there's always a line at Beasley's. There was only a line at Chuck's sometimes. When this is over, Chuck's will go away. Beasley's will probably be packed all the time, and our tenant there, Ashley Christensen, will do better than ever. As a landlord, that's wonderful. You want your tenants to do well. And then our new development, which was stalled, we're redesigning it to make it greener than ever, more outdoor space, more patio space for our tenants, you know, better HVAC system that filters air better. And when we come out of this, we'll have a better development that will serve our tenants better long term. So, you know, trying to find the silver linings in this bad period. One important thing, or a couple of important things I want to mention that sort of kept our attitude good. One thing in Raleigh that we're lucky to have is a lot of industries that are successful during this pandemic. Tech's an example. We have a lot of friends in government. They haven't been impacted yet, at least their salaries haven't been impacted. Now is not the time for us to compare ourselves to our friends in the tech business. I'm close friends with folks at Bandwidth whose stock options have doubled since the pandemic began. You know, I can't look at them and say, hey, I wish I was in their shoes. I need to look at, you know, the world I'm in, the industry I'm in, and can sort of compare how I'm doing to that. In our bubble of downtown restaurant folks, I can't even mention us doing 50% sales because that's good. And I feel bad about it. So many people are dealing with 15 or 20% sales because they don't have the grocery store beer that we have. That, you know, it's just such a bad scene here on the ground. In our businesses, this is an extinction level event. And if you don't go extinct, that's a win if you still exist. Our business will be worth less when this is over, but we'll be alive. And that's sort of the point. So you got to reset the expectations. And we've done that. And we're actually, you know, really happy about where we are right now. Couple other things, like how do we get through this? And one key is we all need to stick together. Nobody can blink. We just need to, you know, stall things. In my world, that means the bank needs to work with me and I need to work with my tenants. Our banks deferred the mortgage for 3 months, then went to interest only for a few months. And then some are staying at interest only. Some are starting to charge the full principal. You know, me as a landlord, I need to make sure I'm passing that on to my tenants too. I can't, you know, charge them rent if they're not able to make money. The best case scenario is in March or April, things get reopened, there's a vaccine, everyone gets back to 100%. Our businesses are busy, they can pay rent, and I can pay our mortgages. So if we don't blink, that's a key. And then, you know, similar thing, it will not stay like this forever. We're gonna get through this. There's gonna be a vaccine, and we're gonna come out of this to a new, better normal. We as a business will be in a better spot, and really everyone else will be okay too. And then the last point I want to say is, if you're in a small business that's struggling like we are, there's going to be more federal help. Some people may say, hey, I just read on CNN on Friday, it's not coming until after the election. And that's probably true. But I'm confident there's going to be more federal help because the Republicans introduced a skinny help bill. The Democrats want to do something more. That shows that everyone wants to do something. And so after the election, there will be more federal help for businesses that have been impacted. So what can we do in Raleigh to make sure downtown comes back after the pandemic and the riots, and that Raleigh comes back better than ever? I have a couple ideas. I just want to get on everyone's radar. The first thing is downtown is going to be is a more diverse neighborhood than most. That's a positive. and folks are going to want to be in a diverse neighborhood after this. And so, you know, downtown has, you know, something going for it that other suburban neighborhoods might not. We are going to have more outdoor seating than we have ever had. Our city council has eased up rules on patios. We're now having seating in parking spaces. It's really cool, funky seating that feels good and safe to hang out at. That's going to last long past this pandemic. It's going to make our downtown better. We're going to have more mental health help than we've had before. Because of this crisis, the mental health issue downtown has become more prevalent, and the Downtown Raleigh Alliance is investing in mental health ambassadors to help connect the folks on the street to resources they need. There are only 75, 100 folks on the street at a given time. It's not going to take long for these mental health ambassadors to get to know everybody and be able to help them. So we're going to be in a better spot from a mental health standpoint than we were before. And the last thing is Raleigh needs our downtown to be thriving. A lot of visitors, when they come to town, they only stay downtown for the convention or go to a wedding. They don't go out to the suburban neighborhood where we would live if you're here. So everyone downtown, even outside of the area, is invested in its success, because that'll be Raleigh's image of how we're doing. So, you know, the whole city will be supportive of the comeback when it's safe. And then, you know, I want to mention Raleigh as a whole and how we can come back better. We're actually lucky in that our city government and our Raleigh Chamber have been working on equity issues for 2 or 3 years already. They're ahead of the curve. Y'all know Adrienne Cole at the Chamber. She's been a champion on this. Same for city government. And I have a couple of ideas of what we can do going forward to work on equity. And for those of y'all who, you know, the equity equality thing, equity is where you help folks who need it a little more, so we all have the same outcome. Help our most vulnerable folks who don't have as much money have the opportunities that everyone else has. One idea we have is to go to a fare-free bus system. Our poorest, most vulnerable folks are the only ones riding the bus. They go to minimum wage jobs, and we're charging them $1.25 a trip or $2.25 a day just to get to work. It's $50 a month, $600 a year. We could, you know, we could connect the dots in the budget pretty quickly and help our poorest folks get to work for free going forward. Another one is healing transitions. We've talked about it already. It's a detox and recovery and homeless shelter on Dix Park that's free. It's one of the best, you know, recovery centers in the country, and it's free. If anybody's having a drug issue on Fayetteville Street and they want to recover, get into recovery, they can walk down the street and go there. That's a huge resource. The Healing Transitions is expanding because of the need in these times. And, you know, our government's really stepped up and said, hey, even in a pandemic, we're going to put money into that type of facility. And so Raleigh will be better long-term. Next one, these are easy, bike lanes and greenways. Raleigh invested in greenways before a lot of areas like ours did 20 or 30 years ago. We need to continue to do that. Bike lanes we need to work on. And when I say bike lanes, I mean protected bike lanes so folks aren't potentially getting hit by a car when they're riding. A bike is a lot cheaper to buy than a car. It's a lot more green. It's a lot more accessible. And we need to be encouraging people to ride their bikes to work and to run errands, etc. And people won't do it until they feel safe. So we need to invest in you know, safe bike lanes. And then the last thing is probably the most important. We need to find a way to help our Black friends create Black wealth. And for me, I think like an entrepreneur, I'm trying to help my friends start businesses. But for everyone in your own separate worlds, you'll have a way to help do that. And if we all sort of work on it individually and we help friends, you know, create wealth, you know, in 5 or 10 years, we can be in a different place, and, you know, it'll be a much better place. So, Eric, that concludes my remarks. Yeah, you know, if there are any questions, I'd be glad to take them, or, you know, if that's not the format, that's fine too.
David, thank you so much. I believe there are a few questions that people left in the chat, and then I'm happy to open the floor to anyone else who wants to ask a question. But hold on a second. Valerie, I'm not sure if you're there and you wanted to read off some of the chat questions.
I am here. Linda asks, were you able to receive a PPP loan from the government?
Yes, we got a PP loan for Trophy, and it was incredibly helpful and really, was the reason, second half of March, April, May, without that PPP loan, it would have been a very different situation. So yes, we got a loan. It was very helpful.
Okay. Elsa has a question about the riots, the night of the riots. Were you able to tell who the rioters were and where they were from?
Good question. And it's a really hard answer. There were all types of folks there. It was mostly young people. I call them kids, but folks 18 or 20. From, I would say, within an hour of Raleigh. But, we've also seen tapes of instigators here who break the first piece of glass and make it more comfortable for other folks to do that. It's really hard to put your finger on one group. There were just all types of people downtown. I will say, mostly younger.
Okay. Eric asks, if there's one thing our city leaders could do that has not happened so far to help the restaurant and other food service businesses, what would that be?
So I think the big one is helping restaurants pivot during the pandemic to a new model that'll work for the next year, however long we're doing it. And that would mean, helping them buy more outdoor seating or helping them pay for a parklet, which is where you take over a parking spot and have tables. Restaurants don't have the $5,000 or $10,000 that costs to do right now. And so if the city could step in and help, that would be great. I think that's in the works. That's coming down the line. The Downtown Raleigh Alliance is working on that here, but every neighborhood needs to figure out how to help their restaurants so that, their restaurants pay for that type of stuff when everyone's in a cash crunch.
The last note here is from Wilson Heyman, and it looks like a great way to end the program. David, you are an inspiration. Thank you so much. Let me see, there are so many needs right now. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be with y'all.
All right.
Eric, can I make a quick comment really quick?
Absolutely.
Really brief. It's not a question. David, Richard Watkins here. I really enjoyed your presentation as a Black man in Durham in the Triangle area. I really appreciated your sentiments on, helping, create Black wealth. I'm not really a business person or, someone focused on wealth, but I do appreciate that sentiment. You probably don't even know it, but you've helped me in a lot of political activities that I've been involved with, and my sister, Candace Watkins, with a lot of the political activities that she's been involved with, her successfully, mine unsuccessfully, regardless. Thank you so much for your help. I really appreciate it. So from the Watkins family to you, David Meeker, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Really, thank you.
Thanks so much. That means a lot.
All right. Thank you so much, David, for coming. One of the questions that I had that I was kind of hoping to hear an answer to, and I was about to put something in the chat, and you answered it for me before I had a chance, was kind of how is the restaurant ecosystem kind of managing this in terms of, a restaurant is having trouble making enough money to pay rent. How does the landlord deal with that, and then how does the bank deal with the landlord? And I'm glad to hear you say that kind of all the different parts of the ecosystem are working together to try to pull through this and realize that there's more strength in people kind of trying to hang on together rather than kind of fighting. So I'm glad to hear that. I hope that continues. I hope that you guys continue to hang on, and I hope that we get that vaccine soon and that we get some other things in place to make it so we can go back to hanging out indoors and ordering from a waiter and enjoying having somebody kind of give us that friendly in-person service and hand us our beer. That's a day I'm looking forward to. I know you're looking forward to it. very much as well. And we just thank you so much for fighting the good fight and staying there. And I hope everybody has a great week. And please join us again next week. And we will close with a four-way test. All right, of the things we think, say, and do, number one, is it the truth? Number two, is it fair to all concerned? Number three, will it build goodwill
and better friendships?
And number four,
will it be
beneficial to all concerned?
All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a blessed week.
You too.
R-O-T-A-R-Y. That spells Rotary. Very good.
Thank you.